Okay, I guess we'll go ahead and get started now. As always, like the recording, the slides are going to be posted on later. So let's get started. Today we're going to be going over cybersecurity, both from me doing the presentation and from some actual industry leaders in cybersecurity coming in and talking to you guys. So if you guys have any questions that you want to ask, like the people who come in who actually work in cybersecurity as a career, to make sure you get those ready so that when they come in and they do a Q&A, they have questions to answer. So let's get started. So today we're going to be talking about cybersecurity, like what it is, what it's about, and how it's applied in the real world. So information, so cybersecurity falls into what's called into like the general term of what's called cybersecurity. So it's into the general field called information security. So information security basically means that information only has value if it's correct. Information that's correct is the only thing that people don't want. Incorrect information. People don't want information that's been tampered with, because in that case, it can harm a business, it can harm an individual, and there's lots of problems that can come with that. So information that's been tampered with in some way or shape or form could prove costly or could prove almost like deadly in certain cases, depending on the use case. And information security consists of two different like elements. The two parts are physical security and digital security. So, and good information security can't have just physical security but no digital, and just digital without physical. They both have to be there, and they cannot have one without the other, and they both must work together towards the same objectives of protecting information. So physical security is like actual physical protecting assets, like buildings, security cameras, protecting equipment, locks, vaults, and protection from like physical threats like theft, vandalism, fire, and natural disasters. But digital security is what cybersecurity falls under, and that's a practice of protecting and recovering your information from malicious cyber attacks. And that could be your information could be on networks, could be on systems or devices, or any type of programs from any type of malicious cyber attacks. We'll talk more about that as we go on. And information security starts the first part of information security is your personal information security. Like what can you do? Not like big companies or big industries. What can you do to keep your personal information secure? And some simple steps that you can take is, keeping your software up to date, making sure that if they patch out any new like viruses or patch out any new threats, any backdoors, that you keep your software up to date. You install antivirus software, not just the ones that are built in. Use public networks carefully. Like if you go to an airport or a cafe or anything like that that is free Wi-Fi, hackers are really easy able to like track what you're doing on that public network. So make sure you have like VPNs, or just try to not use public networks as much as you can. Also, back up your data. Backing up your data is one of the most important things you could do for any reason, because whether you drop your phone or drop your laptop, spill something on it, there's always a risk every day that you lose your information and lose some of the information that you really need in your daily life. So making sure that you continuously back up your information is another really important factor. You secure your accounts with two-factor authentication. It might seem like more of a chore when you're trying to log in, but in the end, the additional security that it provides on top of a strong password is tenfold. It makes your account much less susceptible to like information attacks, and also protects the information, especially on valuable accounts that you don't want people to be able to have access to. Like let's say your AWS account, like I did yesterday. Make your passwords long, unique, and strong. Don't use the same passwords for multiple things. I feel like a lot of us have sort of fallen victim to that before, like using the same password for multiple areas. But it's better to actually try to do long, unique, and strong passwords. But a lot of sites are actually making you like forcing you to do that nowadays, which is good. And be suspicious of strange links and attachments. Um, that goes with like almost anything on the internet. Sort of be suspicious of everything. Like you can't install a software from someone just because they sent it to you. You can't open strange links just because you think that they're safe. Just instead of trusting your own instinct, just err on the side of caution, or only open links that you really know are trusted, that you really know are secure, even if your friend sends them to you. Um, and then from there, when we're talking about information security, what we want to focus on today in the field of, hold on, in the field of information security is the idea of cybersecurity. Oh wait, I have a question. Do you know how to make your own VPN? Making your own VPN is it's tough to do that, and I have no idea how to do that. And there's a lot of like also concerns about security that come into that, but there's a lot of both free and paid options available that are like industry trusted. They're used by professionals and companies alike. So you can always look into those, like NordVPN, Proton VPN, and things like that. So the part of information security that I want to focus on today is cybersecurity. So most definitions of cybersecurity tend to focus on technology like your security of your digital systems, your security of your communications, your emails, your texts, your servers, and stuff like that. But these definitions tend to get blurry really quickly. Let's say a fraudster sends an email to a person, and the claim could be from their bank asking for an insurance statement or something, and they ask for their personal identification number. Would that be considered cybersecurity? Let's say a private investigator calls the employee of a company and they ask, "Can you print some confidential files and leave them in a mailroom so that they can collect them," or anything like that. And these these still fall under the definition of cybersecurity, but most people think cybersecurity tends to focus on technology. They tend to think it's just your digital systems, your communications, but there's a lot of different things. Like there's a lot of different things that go into cybersecurity, like social engineering. And in the real world, most of these attacks typically have some sort of digital elements, as well as some human factors and occasional physical element as well. Because in the real world, like these major hacking attacks that we hear about, it's not just people attacking whatever like servers or databases from the website. There's also elements of human factors like them exploiting people, them sending phishing emails, them and some in some cases actually breaking into physical facilities as well. So most attacks aren't just from the digital side. There are multiple sides and multiple fronts that they get attacked from. So instead of just focusing on the digital elements, that sort of limits our thought process and limits the amount of attacks we can prevent against. We have to make sure that we focus on all elements of cybersecurity and all elements of information security so that potential attackers don't get as much flexibility as they normally would get. So the components of security are, and this is like the CIA, this is what's called the CIA Triad model. So the CIA Triad model, basically what it says is it talks about the three main components of information security, which are confidentiality, integrity, and availability. If you guys remember, I talked a little bit about this yesterday as well in my static website demonstration about like the CIA triad model. But just to go over the general like gist of it again, is that confidentiality is basically who is authorized to use what data, like who can access what data, and how to prevent information from falling into the hands of people that shouldn't have access to it. The next one is integrity, which is the information has not been altered. So integrity means that the information must stay accurate and consistent and make sure that if you put up a file, you put up anything, you put up any information, that no one else can change that information without you wanting them to be able to change it. And the last thing is availability. And availability means information can be accessed when required. And that basically means if I want this information, can I always access it? Like if I always want to be able to access information, how can I make sure that no matter what disaster happens, no matter what attack happens, I will always have timely and reliable access to use of the information? And why is this stuff important? So stuff like unauthorized access, like malware, spyware, viruses, that limits our ability to protect the confidentiality of our data. So that means people can take our data and post it on the public internet and give it into the hands of people who shouldn't have that information. Malicious programs can go onto your computer and alter data values and alter passwords and alter information about like people that can destroy the integrity of our data. DDoS attacks. I'm sure you guys have heard of DDoS attacks before, which are called denial of service attacks. Those can shut down servers or networks. Like if you ever see like Google go down or YouTube go down or Spotify go down or Netflix go down, you see those are sort of denial of service attacks that can shut down servers or networks and making them unavailable. So that's an attack against availability. And sort of correcting these correcting these attacks after the fact costs a lot of time and money for corporations, because if Netflix goes down for like 3 hours, they lose that amount of customers, that amount of data, that amount of um, profit that they would normally get within those 3 hours. So the effort to correct these informations after the fact costs them time and money. So that's why they have to put in the effort before the attacks happen to make sure that they don't lose the time and money that they would normally. So confidentiality. What's like dive into each one of the different components of the CIA triad model, like specifically. So confidentiality, the main thing about confidentiality is to keep your data confidential. You want to restrict sensitive information from being accessed by unauthorized individuals. So, one second. You basically want to make sure that sensitive information is only accessed by people who should have access to it. So you can use stuff like usernames, passwords, access control lists, which means it's kind of what the name suggests. Then it's kind of like what the name suggests, where you could control who has access to information, and encryption. So that's the way you can ensure confidentiality. But confidentiality can also be violated in numerous ways. You can do it through direct attacks, where they use viruses or some other way to gain unauthorized access to your systems, your applications, your databases, and steal and tamper with the data. You can do like network reconnaissance, which sounds kind of complicated, but in a general way, it basically means that as you go to like a public Wi-Fi network, then they could be scanning that network and taking in all the packets and all the like requests that are being sent to that public network. They can be taking all of those for themselves. Get access to some personal information that way. They can eavesdrop on you like electronically through like your communications or your online communications, and they can also do what's called escalation of system privileges, which is in like poorly designed systems. Sometimes people can actually join in as a user and elevate themselves up all the way to like an administrator and get access to information they really should not have access to. And they can also be confidentiality can also be violated unintentionally, like human error or carelessness or something. Like let's say some like IT security person accidentally like makes a password really simple, like password 123, or they forget to turn on a firewall, they forget to turn on encryption, then that can cause a violation of confidentiality. If you share your accounts with someone, that violates confidentiality. You can like actually get physically eavesdrops. Like someone you could be talking to someone about password or confidential information, like face to face, and someone else could just be listening in on that. Um, Again, like failure to encrypt data, poor, weak, or non-existent authentication systems, like poor security, and someone can actually physically steal your equipment, like on accident or not. Like if you have a encrypted hard drive or something, or a laptop, they can actually just take the laptop or the hard drive from you, and that's again a violation of confidentiality that you really wouldn't think about when you think about cybersecurity. So what are some countermeasures to protect your confidentiality? And those include stuff like data classification, labeling, access controls, encryption, basically just a bunch of things that you can do to make sure that whatever data that you don't want people to see, then no one else can see it but the person you want to send it to. Like if you want to send data to like your friend or another company, make sure that only people who can ever access that data are the people who need to. And the last point here is pretty important too. Like on top of all the encryption and everything, you have to make sure that you know the risks. And knowing the risks is one of the main ways that you can actually protect your information by any type of cybersecurity attack. Because if you know the risks, then you know how to counter them, and you know how to deal with them. So just adequate education and training is a really important factor. The next part of the CIA triad is integrity, and integrity means that only authorized people should have the ability to use or modify the data. So not just like have access to the data, but actually be able to use or modify it. So you can again use data encryption, hashing, which basically means like hash the data that you receive. It is a sort of encryption method that it takes the data that you receive and hashes it, and it compares it with the hash of the original method, which are like both just certain like keys, I guess. They're keys and values that make sure that data you receive is the same as the data that was sent. And then there's also like methods like GPG, which is like a free encryption software that you can actually like basically a digital signature. Like you sign the data, and then it checks your signature to make sure that okay, this data is actually the same one that was sent. But again, like integrity can be violated in multiple ways. Like some non-human events can actually change data. Like an electromagnetic pulse can alter hard drives and affect the data on them. Servers can crash. There could be short circuits. There could be power outages that can all cause data failures. And as with confidentiality, cryptography also plays a really important role in integrity because you can make sure that the data that you want to alter, only people who know how to alter like the data can alter the data. So that's another way you can do it. And cryptography, for those of you who don't know, is a method of protecting information and communications through codes, not like computer coding, but like actual like think of like spy movies that you heard of. You hear of like cryptography in those where like they have actual codes that they use so that only the people who know the information and know the codes that they need to use can read and process the data. And finally, there's availability. And availability differs because it says that the information and resources are available to those who need them. And we talked a lot about availability yesterday and with the first AWS presentation. But basically, let's say like um, confidentiality, integrity deal with okay, who has access to this data and who should be able to change the data. But all that doesn't matter if no one can access it at the right times. So information only has value if the right people can access it at the right times, regardless of what happens with the attacks. So data always has to be available. And the way you can mitigate like some serious like availability consequences are through stuff called like redundancy, failover, RAID, which is like a way of storing or backing up data, and having just high availability servers. And just in general, like you have to make sure that your authentication mechanisms, your channels, your systems all have to work properly and all have to be always available. Because if they're not always available, then that can lead to attacks in confidentiality and attacks in integrity if one of your systems is down. So factors that can lead to a lack of availability is overloading your site with fake requests, just like a DDoS attack, power outages, floods, and just in general, if you want to prevent against availability issues, you have to make sure that you back up your data and you make sure your data is redundant, which means that your data is available in multiple copies and available to the sources are from multiple places. You don't just have one source that can go down. You have multiple sources so that even if one goes down, it can switch to another one. And to protect the CIA Triad model, we need to follow the threat model. So the threat model basically says like how secure the model is, like how secure you want to make your data, depends heavily on who you're trying to secure against. So, like, if you're a small company or if you're like just a personal user, like you're just like a person who has a bunch of accounts, then the how secure you need to make your stuff depends on how many people are trying to get into it. Like, if you're just securing like I don't know, like a video game account, then you don't need as much security as like the U.S. government, who needs to secure against like not only people within the state, but actual like nations worth of nations trying to attack them. There's much more security needs to go into the U.S. government side than what needs to go into like a personal user or like a small company. And the access should just be given to the right people and block the wrong people, and use authentication to make sure that the computer can differentiate between the right and wrong people instead of just us being able to differentiate between the right and wrong people. So, what are some tools that you can use for information security? Like, what are some tools you can do that actually let you accomplish the CIA Triad model? Like, you give you confidentiality, integrity, and security. So, some of the tools that let you do this are the first one is, and the main one is authentication. So authentication means that the people who are accessing your information are who they say they are. And this is for the computer to know who they say they are, because we can tell, but the computer can't necessarily tell. So the factors of identification could be some like a user ID and a password. A user ID identifies you while the password authenticates you. So the user ID tells the computer, okay, this is who you are, but then the password lets you know, okay, you are who you say you are, and you are this user ID. And but depending on the password that you give, it's really, really easy to sort of compromise your account. Like a 4-digit PIN. Like if you have your password is 1234 or any sort of 4-digit number, then a computer can easily run through all the 4-digit numbers and get into your account that way. Something called like a brute force attack. 8-digit number is also better, but not good enough because uh, we might think of like an eight digit number having like a few million combinations of numbers it can do. We might think, oh, there's no way a computer can do that. But then you have to realize that computers can do hundreds of thousands of calculations in a second. So a few million digits is honestly nothing when it comes to a computer. When it comes to computer security, and the best way you can do it is using passwords that have characters, numbers, special characters like hashtags and ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and characters like uppercase and lowercase. And the more complicated your password is, the more combinations it can have. Like, it can have trillions or billions or quadrillions of combinations, and the more combinations it has, the harder it is to hack. And also, a lot of sites have like the concept of blocking access. Like after a few failed attempts, you can no longer access your account. Like let's say your phone gets disabled or your account doesn't let you log in for like the next 5 minutes. If it failed one more time, then 10 minutes, and a day or 2 days or a week, and so on and so forth. And then so the idea of passwords and usernames are something that you know. And then the next factor of identification you can use is something that you have, like a kind of security token. So someone who needs the keys, or someone that like needs that information, like needs to come to your physical location to get this token. Like you can have a lot of companies use what's called like sort of fobs that have like randomly generating keys on like physical devices, and they're not connected to the internet or anything. So the only way to access the information is if they come to your physical location and have access to that physical like security token that you have. So that's another way you can do authentication. And these sort of generate random numbers and do stuff like RSA, which is a type of security. And so remote hacking is somewhat controlled since they can't have access to that key token that you have. So it's a lot harder for them to actually hack into your account. And a lot of these things, but again, there's a lot of these things that can be like worked around. Like if you have one of those security fob things, and those can be duplicated, and then they can get those tokens, or they can steal them and then get their tokens. Or if you use, like I use my phone for multi-factor authentication, if someone steals my phone, then and they know my password, then they can get into my multi-factor authentication as well. So there are always downfalls to any type of security that you take. And the final thing in authentication is something that you are. So we had something that you know, your user ID and your password. The next one was something that you have, like a security token. And the last thing is something that you are, which is like something physical based on your characteristics, like basically biometrics. And it's much harder to compromise this. Like if you guys have like actually most phones these days have it, where you have like fingerprint recognition or face ID, anything like that, where your actual physical person is what authenticates you. And when your actual physical person is what authenticates you, then that's a really great way of trying to protect your information because it's much harder to compromise that. Like, it's much harder for hackers to get your biometric fingerprint or your face scanner. I mean, obviously, these scanners are not the best nowadays, but in time they're going to get even better and even better. And it's going to be harder and harder for hackers to sort of fake them, or and they're going to be much more reliable as well. Because sometimes I know, like with Face ID, if you have a mask on, or sometimes it just doesn't get your face, so it's annoying that way. But in time, those glitches are going to be ironed out, and biometric security is going to be one of the most important ways to have security. And all forms of authentication, in general, like all forms of these authentication, whether it's passwords, security tokens, your actual physical appearance, they all have strengths and they all have weaknesses, and they all can be compromised one way or another. So the best way actually is just to use a combination of at least two of these factors. That's what's called multi-factor authentication. The reason it's called multi-factor authentication is because you use two or more different types of authentication. Like, let's say, use a password and your fingerprint, use a password and a security token, use a password or use your face and use a security token. Um, I know like certain companies what they do is they have those fobs that they give you for giving the security tokens, but they protect those security tokens by a fingerprint. You can only see the token if you use your fingerprint. So that way, by combining multiple forms of authentication, then they might be able to guess your password or steal your phone, but it's so much harder to do both at the same time. Okay, so the next tool for information security is what are called access control. So, access control or access control lists are permissions that describe what access that each user has to view or modify any file, folder, or program on a computer. And they're created for each resource. And the list of users that can read and basically access control lists is a list of users that can read, write, delete, or add information. But it's difficult to maintain all the lists for all the different information that you have. That's where role-based access control comes in, where rather than individual lists for each file, you have roles. Like, let's say the IT department has one role, the financial department has one role, the CEO has one role, the board chairman has one role, and users are assigned to these roles, and these roles can define what they access. Um, there's some models like these in real life called like the Bell LaPadula model. Basically BLP is a state machine model used for enforcing access control in government and military applications, which you can read more about that online. The the BIBA model or the BIBA integrity model that focuses on integrity, and the Chinese wall model um, assumes like is sort of based on like the Great Wall of China in a cybersecurity way, where it walls off your company data sets based on confidentiality. Next one is encryption. So where an algorithm or program encodes or scrambles information during transmission or storage. And it can only be decoded or unscrambled by the people who actually know how you encrypted it. So how is this done? So the way that it's done is both parties agree on the encryption method, and there are like hundreds of encryption methods out there, each one with their benefits and risks. And some of the ones that you'll like encounter frequently are what's called symmetric keys, where the sender and receiver both have the key, but that can be kind of risky because if one side gets compromised, then both sides get compromised. Or there could be a public key, where one person has a public key and a private key, and each person has a public key and a private key. So in order to send or receive the information, they need the corresponding private keys, but they use the public keys to send the information. So it's much harder to get access to both of those keys. There's passwords and backups. So single-factor authentication, single-factor authentication, one form of it is just having a username and a password. But that's the sort of easiest one to break because there's so many ways you can brute force it. But there's ways of getting around that or trying to prevent your password from being stolen, which are sort of like the way that when you're making a password for a new account, it tells you like, oh, you need to have this long, it needs to have these characters, it needs to have like an uppercase letter, a lowercase letter. And we might think that it's annoying for us to remember, but it's trying to it's trying to increase the security of our accounts by making them a certain length. The longer the password is, the harder it is to guess. It must contain certain characters. You should change your password frequently so that even if they get access to your password, then if you change your password frequently, then they can't just keep trying to brute force it. The more you change it, making sure that you don't change your password, and making sure that if you work for a company, that you always keep them informed on any information risks that you might encounter. And for backups are just sort of taking like snapshots of your data. And a good backup plan basically requires that you understand all the resources that you have in your company, and you back it up regularly. Like you don't just take a backup once every 2 years. You back it up once every few months or once every week if you have really critical information. And you store those backups somewhere offsite so that even if your one site goes down, your data stays secure. Um, so firewalls are, in general, they're just ways to inspect and stop information. So they're basically for ways to prevent computers from accessing your network or apps from accessing your internet on your network. And they intercept the packets that you come in, and they say, okay, is this allowed? Then let it in. If this isn't allowed, then stop it. And there's multiple different ways you can implement them in hardware and software for watching for specific types of activities and making sure that whatever information you have is always secure. And then VPNs, we talked a little bit about before, which are called virtual private networks, and they're basically allows you to remotely access the internet from either like a server on your company or a server that's hosted somewhere else. Like let's say like if you buy NordVPN or something, you can access the internet from NordVPN specific servers. And what this does is it can encrypt the communication, the data exchange, and it also prevents your IP address from being used in your online communications, which can help because if someone steals your IP address, they know a lot of information about you. And then there's like actual physical security. So protection of the actual equipment, like hardware and networking components. So these are like actual physical things you do to protect your data. Like you put locked doors, use vaults, use security cameras, secured equipment. You monitor the environment. You use like a temperature, humidity, airflow for computer equipment. You train your employees. You have actual like security guards. Like those are physical security that you can do that are also included in information security. And then lastly, there's security policies. So security policies are basically just um, like rules or policies that companies use to give guidelines to the employees for the use of their resources, for the use of their how to ensure confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and how to monitor what each employee can do within the company, like bringing their own devices. Like if they bring their phone can compromise the company network. So to make sure that each one of the things is accounted for and that the companies can make sure that all the information is secure. And next, what we're going to talk about is the different types of like threats and what they can do, like the different threats to cybersecurity. So we're talking about ways to prevent them, and now we're going to talk about what threats we need to actually prevent against. So there's three main types. There's vulnerabilities, which are weaknesses in your security system. There's threats, which are circumstances that have a potential to cause harm. And there's controls, which are means and ways to block a threat, which tries to exploit one or more vulnerabilities. And these threats sort of come on a spectrum from local threats to shared threats to national security threats, which most of the times you just have to worry about like local threats if you're a small business company, or if you're a larger company, then shared threats, and then national securities for actual countries. So some different types of cyber attacks are, like you said before, denial of service, which is where they send either they send like malicious files, or a denial of service attack is any type of attack that causes a complete or partial system outage, which basically means like they could do anything. They could send a maliciously formatted file to a server that causes it to overload. An example of this is, if you can look this up, called the billion laugh attack, where an XML file references itself and just keeps expanding until it causes the server to go out. Then there's distributed denial of service attack, which is DDoS attacks, which is where multiple machines attack a server at once, and it could be up to like tens of millions of computers all attacking one service and causing that service to go down. Um, there's malware, which is like hostile, intrusive, or annoying software program code. So malicious plus software, that's how you get malware. And once active, malware can like block access to your data. It can steal your data. It can make systems unoperable. It can like turn your computer off and make sure it can never turn on again. And it often triggers secretly when a user runs programs that or downloads files that shouldn't be downloaded. And those malware includes like the stuff you should think about, like computer viruses, Trojan horses, spyware, adware, etc. And then there's internet bots. So internet bots, also known as web robots, are automated internet applications controlled by software agents. So they're basically like pieces of code that act like humans and interact with like network services, so that like they carry out like normal human tasks. Like they open a browser, they search for something, they reply to queries, they provide entertainment. They can like serve commercial purposes, or they can also be used for malicious purposes, like what's called a botnet, which is a network of, they're called like zombie computers, but basically it's just like computers that are run by code. They're not like actual people going in and doing like automated tasks. There's code running over and over and over again, simulating people, and they can spam computers or spam services and take them down. Um, Types of cyber attacks that are really important to know about are stuff like adware and spyware. So adware is advertising supported software, hence adware, and it's basically any software package which automatically displays like advertising materials on a computer while the software is being installed or while the application is being used. So that's like the stuff you think of when you see like pop-up ads come up a lot, or when you're like if you're infected with a virus, you keep saying pop-up ads, and that usually means that you've been affected by some form of adware. Then there's spyware, which is like a really broad category of software, but basically what it's meant to do is take control of your computer's operation without you knowing, without your consent. So it can like record the type of sites that you visit. It can log your keystrokes. It can record what numbers you typed in order to get like your passwords or your PIN numbers. It can do a lot of really powerful, really scary things. There's spamming. So spam is like you probably seen like in your email or your text messages and your phone calls. Like you, when you, it's like the abuse of electronic messaging system to send messages that you don't want in large quantities. Like you see like spam emails, you get like spam phone calls, you get spam in your web search engines. There's a lot of spam available on the internet. Then there's phishing. So phishing is a criminal activity using social engineering techniques, which basically social engineering is, it's like a cybersecurity threat that doesn't have to deal with computers, but instead has to deal with actual people exploiting your information. And it's like a phishing attack is like sending information that appears to be from trusted sources, like it could be an email from your bank, but instead it's someone pretending to be your bank and trying to steal your information. Um, then there's other types of phishing, like spear phishing, which is like a really targeted type of phishing activity where they actually like research their targets and they create messages that are extremely personal to them in order to get the most information from them. Um, and some tips to sort of detect phishing emails are to like consider if you were expecting the email, check the email address, look for the grammar, look for the type of like language that they use, and see, is this really the email that I was expecting, or is this really how this person would talk? A man-in-the-middle attack occurs when hackers sort of insert themselves between a client and a server, so they can track like emails that you send or what's being sent or received on both sides. And usually these happen on like free Wi-Fi networks, because then they can always track what's going on. DNS attack, which is a domain name service attack. So as we mentioned yesterday, DNS is one of the main protocols used in the internet, and it lets you turn a domain into an IP address, which a computer can use. And a DNS attack is an attack where the attacker sort of exploits vulnerabilities in that DNS. And what they can do is they can actually send you to websites that you didn't mean to go, and say like, oh, you typed in google.com. I'm going to send you to this like malware website which tracks your IP address or tracks other information. And then something called like SQL injection, which lets users, it's used for databases, and it's a way of sort of getting information from that database that they shouldn't really be able to get access from through like malicious code or malicious SQL queries. And there's some technical scanning techniques which you can do. So technical scanning is basically an essential part of network administration. And what it lets you do is it collects information about computers and networks and see like what services are running or what's actually running on the network. So an example of this is like ping tests, where machine tests like sends an internet control message to a target IP address, and it gets back everything that's running on that machine. Like it echoes it back, and it's commonly used by organizations to debug networking issues to see like, okay, what's wrong with this network? Why isn't it running? And then there's also what's called traceroute. So a traceroute is a route between two computers that can be calculated by sending out packets that either have increasing or decreasing times to live. So what it does is when a packet is in transit and its time to live, which is how long that packet can exist, it decreases zero. The machine processing the packet sends back an error message to the source point, indicating that the destination was not received. And so what this is used is to map out a network and determine how many like switches and routers exist between you and your destination. So an example is like if you have a target that's 12 servers or 12 hops between routers away, then a packet with a time to live of 11 is sent towards the target. It won't reach the end, and so that you can know that okay, there's more than 11 steps between me and the final destination. So I have to increase the time to live. So now we're going to talk about some vulnerabilities, which are some ways that people can attack you or some threats that are available on your servers. And these are hardware vulnerabilities. So one type of hardware vulnerability is adding or removing a hardware device. So you can like snoop, you can place like secret cameras or secret devices on actual hardware. You can tap the wires of a hardware to like see what communications are going through. You can like actually destroy physical hardware. Like you can like destroy a computer room. You can accidentally drop a PC box. You can damage a machine by like spilling coffee. You can steal the machine, or you could actually like physically use a hammer or something to break a machine. That's examples of hardware vulnerabilities. The software vulnerabilities are the stuff we typically think about, like software deletion, software modification, like Trojan horses, viruses, and software theft, like torrenting or pirating or unauthorized copying. So these are some sort of types of malicious codes. Like the most famous ones that we think about are Trojan horses, which are computer programs that appear to have a useful function, but also have potential malicious functions in the background. And there's viruses, which are hidden like self-replicating software that infects the system in the same way a virus infects a person, and it cannot be run by itself, and it usually requires some sort of program to be run that lets the virus attack your computer. And the way that like moving away from like actual like cybersecurity, like in depth about what cybersecurity is, we're talking about how cybersecurity appears in the real world. And so, what are the threat actor groups, which are basically what threat groups are there in cybersecurity in the real world? And cybersecurity professionals must be aware of these different types of threat groups. And there's diverse groups, and they vary substantially in the motivation, the resources, and the techniques that they use. So the first group is what's called like script kiddies, and it's like a sort of a demeaning term they use for them because they're the least advanced type of hackers. And they refer to someone who uses programs, basic hacking tools, and they use the tools without really understanding what's going on behind the scenes. And they use scripts without understanding what's actually going on. And they're usually self-taught individuals, typically teenagers. They have like little funding, little technical knowledge, and they just seek like reputation, like clout, or they just attack for fun. And how do you protect against them? You just make sure you have your basic like security and authentication factors in, and usually that protects against anything. The next groups are hacktivists. So hacktivists are staff members who work against an organization. They work against an organization's interests, either deliberately or accidentally. And they usually have no budget or resources, and they have granted access. And their objective is usually to seek revenge or have financial motives against an organization that they're already a part of. And how you protect against them is make sure that you monitor your staff and you ensure that your staff is working towards your company's benefit. The next ones are like actual criminal gangs, and they're groups of people in national or international teams that have actual tools and software and equipment that they use to get financial gain by hacking large corporations. Then there's nation state hackers, which are highly trained specialists. They have extremely large budgets, and they follow like strategic multi-year plans to attack actual countries and get like confidential government information. And then finally, there's malicious insiders, which are sort of staffs members who work against an organization's own interests, kind of the same way that a hacktivist does. And again, they seek revenge or have financial motives. So A lot of the times that we mentioned in this like presentation are like a lot of times we mentioned cryptography and encryption. So I'm just going to go over like some examples of what cryptography and encryption really are. So cryptography basically is a combination of crypto and graphy, which is secret writing, and that's what cryptography is. And cryptography uses what's called ciphers, which are an algorithm that converts some sort of plain text, like the text that you want to send, into what's called a ciphertext, which is an encrypted message. And that's sort of the process of how that message is converted into something that cannot be understood except by someone who knows how to decrypt it. So some forms of encryption are, like I say, symmetric encryption, which are algorithms for encrypting information that uses the same key as the decryption process. So the same key you use to encrypt it is the same one you use to decrypt it, and that's fast and easy to implement. But it has a lot of risks associated with it because if someone attacks either side, they get access to both the sender and the receiver, so they have the same keys. And so some of them examples that of them include like the AES standard. And in this cipher, the word holiday is shifted by one alphabet letter. So H goes to I, O goes to P, and it becomes IPMJEBZ. So that's unreadable. So it's encrypted. And the person on the other end just has to subtract one, and they get the plain text back. And then there's asymmetric encryption. So asymmetric encryption is the process of encrypting information using a different key to decrypt the information. So instead of using the same key to encrypt and decrypt, use different keys, like one key to encrypt and another key to decrypt. And these keys are generally known as public keys and private keys, and they're generated at the same time. So once a public key is generated, it's public. You can share it with anyone and everyone. And anyone who has a copy of the public key can encrypt a message, but only you have the private key, and only the holder of the private key can decrypt the message. So let's say you have like this diagram. In this diagram, Alice here is the sender, and Bob here is the receiver. So Alice encrypts a message using the public key that Bob generated. So Bob, when he wanted to do encryption, he generated both a public key and a private key, and he gave Alice his public key. So Alice uses Bob's public key to encrypt a message and sends it over to Bob. Now Bob, being the only one that has his own private key, can decrypt the message and get the message back. But since if Bob doesn't share his private key with anyone else, no one else can have access to the decrypted message. They can only see the encrypted one. And finally, what I'm going to go over is just some careers in cybersecurity. So there's the two presenters who are going to be coming later in a few minutes are going to talk a lot more about the careers in cybersecurity, but just some general information, just some general background information, so you guys can know and ask questions to them, this is just some basic information about careers in cybersecurity. And cybersecurity is a sort of fascinating and ever-growing field because more people are using computers than ever. So the more people that use computers, the more risks there are, the more people that want to take advantage of them. And it lives at the intersection of established technologies, technologies that have been there for a while, and more threats that are coming up to place. And cybersecurity professionals don't always actually have traditional four-year university degrees. They can come from various backgrounds, like trade backgrounds or no degree backgrounds, and still work in cybersecurity. And and what's projected is like by 2021, there's going to be around 3.5 million open cybersecurity jobs, open from 1 million in 2014. And a lot of these like organizations happen in like regions across the world, like not just in the U.S. but all across the world. And they're only going to keep growing. The more that people use computers, the more computers are available. The more threats are going to be available, and the more people are going to want to take advantage of other people. So some jobs that are available in cybersecurity are SOC analysis, and SOC stands for Security Operations Center. So an SOC analysis is also known as a cybersecurity analyst or a triage analyst. And what they do is they respond to individual alerts and investigate as if they're like a detective based on the evidence that they give. So what they do is they analyze a server or a service or anything. They analyze any sort of security threat, and they respond to them, and they sort of figure out what that threat is and where that threat came from based on the evidence that they gave. Next, you have what's called the incident responder, also known as an incident response analyst. So this role determines if a reported alert is an organizational attack or a persistent threat on a company's network, and ensures that it's remediated, which means it ensures that it's solved. So the SOC analysis just determines where that threat is from and determines some of the basic information about the threat. And then the incident responder determines if that threat is like an organization coming against the company or if it's just like a persistent threat that a company has. The third one and the last one is the threat hunter. So the threat hunter is known as an incident threat analyst. And this role is proactive in that instead of like fixing threats after they've happened, the threat hunter, the incident threat analyst, researches the current and latest threats, and they research how those threats have evolved to make sure that those threats can't be applied to their company in the future. So instead of those threats that have already happened, they protect against threats that have not happened. And just some more like security roles that are available are like security consultants, which like solve cybersecurity problems under the guidance of a senior consultant, like administrators who work with like large scale security tools, identity and access management administrators, which are like a new role that basically focuses on making sure users and roles only have the privileges that they need, and making sure that the system and application authorities are the only ones that can have access to what they do, and that they ensure all like the single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, everything like that. And some more topics in like modern cybersecurity are cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency is a pretty big thing, and I'm not going to go into it like almost at all. I'm just going to give you like a general idea of it. So over the last few years, there's been a rapid increase in cryptographically controlled currencies called cryptocurrencies. The original cryptocurrency, one of the main leaders of cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, proposed a new method for monetary exchange based on a shared ledger called a blockchain. And I'm not going to go into that much into depth of what a blockchain is or anything like that, but that's what cryptocurrency is based on. So they use this anonymous ledger called they use a blockchain that's outside of government control. Payments are designed to be near impossible to regulate or block. Like the government can't regulate them or block them as of now. There's no laws that govern against it. So this makes cryptocurrencies unbelievably useful for money laundering, criminal marketplace activities, or just general like internet commerce that they don't want regulated. And one of the notable consequences of cryptocurrencies was the rapid growth of ransomware, because in this model, the victim has to pay the attacker, and now the attackers can ask for money through Bitcoin or ask for money through like other sort of cryptocurrencies that are basically untraceable and unregulated, so that like as of now they can get the money back, and they can make concealed payments and get money that's not regulated and get away with the attacks. But cryptocurrency also has a lot of benefits, like it's the fact that it is unregulated gives it a lot of benefits over modern currency as well. But it also makes it a lot more volatile. And finally, some facts about cybersecurity are that the global cost of cybercrime is expected to exceed $2 trillion in 2019. So there's a lot of cybercrime like in the world, but there's a lot of also open opportunities for like cybersecurity workers, people who work in cybersecurity to prevent those threats. And there are ransomware attacks every 14 seconds, which can vary based on day to day. And the main causes of data breaches, like you always hear about data breaches, like people's accounts were leaked or Facebook had a data breach, are malicious and criminal attacks. And those are responsible for 48% of all data breaches. And phishing emails, like the emails that you get where it's like people, like your bank's asking like, oh, can you give me this money? Or it's like a Nigerian prince came and asked for like, can you send me this money and I'll send you like to help me out? Or like people like pretending to be family members, they can also do phishing emails. And those emails are responsible for almost 91% of cyber attacks. And almost half of all cyber attacks are targeted at small businesses because they know that small businesses don't have the capacity, they don't have like the capital to actually get like large amounts of security on their information. sort of easy targets for hackers to go against. And yeah, that's basically some of the main things that I want to talk about today. We're just like a general overview of cybersecurity. Obviously, like there's a lot more things I can go into. There's a lot more depth to go into, but a lot of that stuff you can research on your own. Find what you're interested in if you're interested in cybersecurity, and work towards it. And work towards it as not even like as a career and as a passion if you're interested in it. And that's the end of my slideshow. So in a few minutes, what's going to happen is we're going to have two people who actually work in cybersecurity come in. They're going to introduce themselves as well, and they're going to introduce themselves as well, and they're going to basically talk about their experience in working in cybersecurity and working in the industry. So if you guys have any questions that you want to ask them, please feel free, and please like make sure to ask questions. Um, Ask them anything about like their journey, their experiences, like stuff that you can do if you want to have a career in cybersecurity, and have questions ready so that you can ask them, and we and you can actually get the most out of like they're coming here and they're taking the time to come out here. So yeah, they're gonna be coming in a few minutes. So if you want, you guys can like stay on this call, but take a little bit of like a break while they come in here, and yeah, but they're going to be coming on to this call, I believe. So stay on this call when they come in. And I'll also make sure to go in and answer any like remaining questions that um, are still coming in. And make sure you guys, and also think of like some questions that you want to ask them.
Hi, Meher.
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. So are we all set? I know we are waiting for Nilofer to.
Yeah, I think besides that, we are all set.
Okay, so you want us to wait for that, or should we just begin?
Um, we can wait a little bit for that, and if not, we can get started in like a couple of
All right.
minutes. Because
Okay, so why don't we get started? I can start with my own intro, and
okay,
then when Nilofer joins, she can give her intro, and then we can all, be on the same page with respect to what we want to share. So I'm pretty sure that your presentation was awesome. You rocked it,
thank you.
and I hope the audience enjoyed it as much. And um, do we know how many people are on the?
I think there are 34 attendees today.
Okay, and they are all from high school?
Yeah, high school, and I think some might be from middle school as well.
Okay, all right. All right, so why don't I start with my own intro? Hi, this is Gurdeep Kaur. I am the Chief Information Security Officer for PSCG, and I'm sure that most of you are familiar with PSCG because your parents at least receive the bill every month to pay for the electricity and for the gas, right? So PSCG is the biggest electric generation, transmission, and distribution utility in New Jersey. It supplies electric to 3.9, if I may say, customers in New Jersey, and then also it serves the Long Island region for electric. So that is PSEG Long Island is an entity that is, we have partnered with LIPA. LIPA is Long Island Power Authority. And then PSCG also serves gas to the customers of New Jersey. So how do we do that? So we have the power plants that are, of course, we are in the process of divesting the fossil power plants so we can be more eco-friendly, if I may say, and then also working a lot on on making electric vehicles and the energy efficiency. And if you go to Costco today, or if you go with your parents to Costco today, you will see the energy friendly LED, and you can get the rebate, and PSEG is heavily sponsoring those things. So we are in that together. So why I bring that up here? Because as everyone has a common goal to protect the planet, to secure the planet, if I may say, and to make sure that our next generations can actually benefit from all the good work that we do today. So same is with the cybersecurity. All of us have to pitch in together so we can keep our critical infrastructure like the power plants, like the clean energy efficiency programs, or the electric vehicle, or the modern grid, all of that secure, right? So it takes an entire village, and that's what I'm so glad that 39 brilliant kids are here to actually learn more about what the cybersecurity as a career is about. And even if you don't pick cybersecurity as a career, what is going to be your role in making sure that you can contribute to securing your community, your city, your state, your nation, and the entire world? It's definitely a very collaborative effort. So, as I mentioned, I'm currently the Chief Information Security Officer. I have been in security for a very long time. You were not even born for many, many years before that. So I'm that old. But I started in IT. I was in Delhi. I did my electrical engineering from Delhi College of Engineering in back home in Delhi. And then while I was doing that, computers was becoming hot at that time. Yeah, I'm that old. So we were doing that, and then the NIIT came out with their advanced software management, and that's what I got selected into. I took the 2-year computer software management course, and then I also started with the job in the computer field only. And then I joined United Nations, and then I moved to US, did all the consulting gigs in primarily in IT. Then Y2K was happening around at that time, and they needed so many professionals who could help with the with addressing the Y2K needs. And then cyber was not really a field by itself at that time. And then unfortunately there were few virus outbreaks, Red Code and NIMDA, and then unfortunately September 11 happened. And then there was a lot of focus on security, both from physical and cyber perspective. So then I would say it really became a full-fledged cybersecurity. They need all the professionals, all the help. And I joined AIG in 2005, have been in security since then. And Nilofer, I know she's online now, so I will pass the floor to her for the intro. But I would say I'm so glad, I'm so honored to be partnering with Nilofer. We co-founded the ISC Squared New Jersey chapter, and we have been, I would say, in sync since then. Partners in crime. So Nilofer, all yours.
Thank you so much, Gurdeep and Meher. Thank you so much. You are doing a great job. I want to commend the whole team at High School Navigator. You guys have put in this great effort and taking time off. You could have been just, enjoying yourself, but now you are like reaching out to people and helping people out. I'm very happy to be part of this effort. And I'm Nilofer Tamboli. I am a risk management professional. Like Gurdeep said, we started our journey in 2012 with the same effort, be the change that you want to see. At that time, both of us had young kids, and we could not afford to leave work and then go to cybersecurity meetups in New York City, because we didn't have anything going on in New Jersey. That's how we started. We said, okay, let's do something over here. Because if we have this problem, I'm sure everybody else has this problem. And we started the ISC Squared New Jersey chapter. Like Gurdeep, I've been in security for a while now. I started off with Windows for Work Group 3.1. I'm sure like you guys don't know. So that's when
she gave up her age.
So, and I passed my CISSP exam in 2001. That was the first time they had offered the CISSP exam in India. and I've been fascinated with security and different aspects of security ever since. I host a YouTube channel called Cybersecurity Career Talks. Gurdeep has been a guest, and there are other people who join me. And I'm an organizer of the biggest cybersecurity career meetup group. Thanks so much, and I'm very happy to share and answer questions that have been popping up right now.
Okay, so I think we'll get started with some of the questions that are coming up. One of them is this one's, I think, probably a popular question. Do you think college is worth it when you want to go into a job in cybersecurity? Or do you think it's more like a career that you can learn on your own and then try to go into industry?
Okay, Gurdeep, you want to start?
I'm fine. I can start, and my thought process would be, I think it is still worth going to college. It just broadens your horizon, and again, there can be exceptions. Everyone have their own pathway, right? So there is nothing set in stone. But if I am asked the question, then my opinion would still be yes. College plays a role, not from just the perspective of the courses, but in terms of experience, what you can gain out of that experience. You may find the online experience valuable, you may find the in-person experience valuable, you may find networking, you may find, meeting other people, or learning about new challenges, or looking up to, people who may be doing things that you aspire to be. So it's all kind of a package deal, if I may say. So you should not think of what will help me in getting a job or making a career. From my perspective, you should think more about what will help me to make me a person I want to be, and that can help you, gain clarity in terms of what you will find valuable or not.
Okay, so the question is an emphatic yes, and your focus should be why you're going to college. Because I'll give you two perspectives. When I started off in India, everybody used to go to college. So it was not like, oh, should I do this or should I do that? But at that time, my perspective was that this is going to be a 3-year fully paid like vacation kind of a thing. And the idea was not like, oh, college was important. But then when I did my MBA while I was working, my perspective was very different. It was like, okay, so what can college offer me? What are the different subjects that I should take in my MBA, which will help me? It was like connecting with the professors, learning about new projects. It was different. Now, when you are going to college over here, after you're finishing your high school, your idea should be, okay, when you are choosing subjects, what are the subjects which are interesting to me? What if you have like a career chalked out, that's great. But whatever you start with, sticking with it consistently, getting a good grade in whatever you do. So whatever little stuff that you do, make sure that you do it well. And that is your focus. If you are focused on the outcome, like, okay, I'm going to get a college degree, but while I'm over here, is there any projects that are going on? Is there something which is related to this that I can connect with other professionals who are already doing stuff? So just don't go there to say, okay, fine, so I've got to go to college, I've got to these things, these are my try and seek out other things. There are societies, there are clubs, there are so many different things that are going on. Start contributing, become a volunteer, put in your time. Besides, like, and I know, like, because I'm going to teach at Rutgers in fall, so I know the amount of work that goes into a class. But make sure that there is extra stuff that you do, and I know that there is a lot of time that you get, so don't give me an excuse that we don't get time and I'm studying and I have an exam or a paper coming up. So put in the time. To as much time as you put in your studies and stuff, the other half should be in new projects, in new developments, and go and be that pet of the teacher. So if you really want to learn stuff. So that is my perspective on college and why you should be there. Again, coming back, can you have a career without going to college? Yes, but it's just going to be so much more difficult. So either you front load your work and and another thing, why do you go to college? Because that consistency, you know how to like learn anything. So those are the soft skills that you learn. Okay, it is a different alien subject. How do you approach it? How do you do research? How do you write a paper? How do you present that? How do you take a test? There is so much to learn in college. It's not just, okay, this degree or that degree, but there is a lot that you can get out of college. So make sure that if your parents are paying for it, you are making the best use of their time, their money and your time.
All right, thank you so much. There's a lot more questions coming in. I think two that we can combine together are. So I had a question about like what does it look like as a day-to-day responsibility, and I think we combine that to Herman had a question like what language do you use the most in your job? So, well, I guess like combining those two, like what language, like computer language, would you say, if any, do you use most in your job? And in general, like what are your day-to-day responsibilities that you see like on a normal day in your job?
Okay, I use English the most in my job. So okay, coming back to like when you ask what language you use, I know what his thing was, but depends on what you're doing. If you're asking me if I had to just learn one language, I would start off with Python because it's very versatile. Can you get by with just one language? It depends on what you do. But if you're starting now, JavaScript, Python, and any one functional language, I mean, should set you up pretty good because, and again, depends on your job, depends on what you will be doing, right? I do risk management. So basically, I don't do coding, I don't do programming on the job. But suppose somebody brings something to you, JSON, XML, so you should be able to read it. You should be able to understand what this particular thing is doing. So focus on like, yes, languages you'll probably learn if you can, even learn on your own, and make sure that is taken care of within your cybersecurity. What does a day in a life look like? Reviewing projects for risk. I obviously cannot share, so I'm just going to share like general stuff. For the simple reason, because I'm talking here on behalf of myself. I'm like, this disclaimer probably you went through before we started work, but reviewing risk in different technologies that we are trying to implement, reviewing different risks in different products that come in. So that is basically, that takes up most of the time, presenting my findings, like negotiating with people. So all those things take up most of my day.
Right. For me, I agree with Nilofer on the language side. Like, yes, every day I use English, but Python, absolutely. I will take a kid any day who can do anything in Python. And from my own perspective, no, I'm not a Python pro. But I would just like to highlight that when I was doing hands-on at that time, it was more about the Windows scripting or the PowerShell scripting. And I never had a programming job. But every time I made sure that if there is something that requires scripting, I will learn it. I will Google, I will find something, I will make the script, I will test it. And if I need help, I will ask an expert. So I will reach out that, hey, can you please check this for me? So that should be the attitude, because the languages will change, platforms will change, but what will always remain is your aptitude and your attitude. So I just want to highlight that part from the language perspective. And then from a day in my life of CISO, I would say every day I am thinking about what next, what threats are coming now, what do I need to address. So many days, or one of the days, Colonial Pipeline happens, then it's all over the Wall Street Journal and everywhere in the news. And then my board or my management wants to know that, hey, will this impact us? Are we susceptible to the threat that Colonial Pipeline had? So I'll be doing the end-to-end risk assessment and making sure that, yes, we have the preventative controls. We can prevent that attack. If for whatever reason the attack is happening, we can detect the attack. And then if that fails too, then we have the responsive, like we can respond. So we can respond and then we can recover. So that's the kind of end-to-end strategy that every single day we think about. And any project that goes in, any external, if I may say, threat we see, or any external event that happens, then we should always, like, that's everyday kind of thing for me. That if someone wants to do, let's say, hey, we are working on this electric vehicle project, so we want to come up with this cool technology where when people use the EV station, we can generate the data and we can analyze it. Okay, cool, right? But then end to end, how will that, are there any risks? Are there any threats that we are seeing there? That what we call in the technology terms threat modeling, right? So, and again, today in my job, I am not doing the threat modeling, but my team is. Like, I have team of security architects, I have team of risk analysts, the compliance analysts, then the threat intel analysts who are constantly looking around, collecting data from internal and external systems, and making sure that we are prepared, if I may say. We are blocking the threat, we are addressing the threat. So in a nutshell, that's what I do pretty much, besides presenting to the board, or besides, if I may say, reviewing and approving other kind of requests.
Okay, thank you so much. I think the next, like, a couple of questions are around the same topic. Are there any resources that you recommend for helping them learn about cybersecurity, or like getting started with like practical applications of cybersecurity?
So what I can suggest is, like, it's everywhere. So one, I would say that make sure that you, as you read I hope you all read the newspaper, even though online, digital, but you read. So definitely look out for, things that are happening, because there are so many ransomware attacks kind of things happening, or the password compromise happening. So just keep an eye on those things. And as you read those things, there are some links, and don't click links madly, right? So be very careful. There could be phishing attacks. So I do not want to encourage the clicking kind of behavior, and I don't want to encourage opening the attachments blindly. So please be very careful with that. But the resources are available right there every single day. But from the perspective of learning, if I may say, SANS is a good resource. SANS is a good resource. ISC squared is a good resource. ISACA has a foundational cybersecurity thing. And then there are, certifications kind of thing. And I'm not asking you to go and take a certification, but the resources that are used to prepare, let's say the CompTIA, so the security fundamentals, I think you will like, you will learn a lot from those resources as well. And also keep an eye on, at least the high schoolers I know, I'm not sure about the middle schoolers, but the high schoolers generally have a LinkedIn account. So subscribe to the channels, or subscribe to the resources that offer those kind of tips and fundamentals, if I may say. And do not hesitate to reach out. Never ever hesitate to reach out to any of the security professionals. You will be pleasantly surprised how eager they would be to help you with navigating, if I may say, the world of even the resources.
Thanks, Gurdeep. And basically depends on what you want to do. But if you just want a idea about like what are the different types of areas within domains within cybersecurity, buy a CISSP prep book, because it will walk you through everything. So just take it. It's like probably and you don't need the latest and greatest. You can buy like a year old, because this is for the people who are training for passing the CISSP exam, etc. But the book remains the same. Every 3 years it goes through some change. So you can buy a $30-$40 book. I mean, yeah, I'm old school. I like to hold my book and read it and stuff. I have Kindle, but there is sometimes, you just want a reference book. So buy that, go through the different domains, because they will walk you through network security, communications, basically software, SDLC process, and a whole lot of things, which will tell you like what are the different things. When we talk about cybersecurity, most people think about, and even if you do like a Google search and on images like this person sitting in front of all these monitors with a hoodie on, so that's not it, right? I don't represent that. So there are many different, Gurdeep is like a CISO, so there are so many different options available to you. So don't just like think that you have to be coding and you have to be doing penetration testing and you have to, there are so many things. So depends on what you like. You can then go into it and try and go to nist.org. They have so many standards. So whatever, suppose you are interested in mobile security, so they have different things. Pull that down and take a read. Get used to reading stuff every day, and that's a good start. Like Gurdeep said, the different resources she mentioned, and if you think that you hit a wall, reach out to people and say, hey, I'm interested in this XYZ, what do you think would be a good thing for me to read? And there are so many Udemy courses, so it's very, very, very inexpensively you can like learn about stuff. YouTube videos, it's good, but you have to like, it's like a big time suck. So just be wary of that.
Okay, thank you so much for that. I think one of the questions that came up before was actually this is a question that I had. Where do you see the cybersecurity industry going in the future? Like with so many new technologies coming out, like let's say like the cloud or anything. Like where do you see cybersecurity moving towards in the future, or how do you see it growing in the future?
From a CISO perspective, Gurdeep, you want to?
It is it will be evolving over the time. Like nobody 10 years ago or even 15 years ago, nobody could have thought, right, that this will be where we are today. So security, what we are now striving towards, and many companies have done that, security should be kind of baked in into every single thing you do. So technologies may change, requirements may change, our outlook, it is still that, hey, we want a secure world. So from that perspective, I think that cybersecurity, there will be a lot of job security, if I may say, in cybersecurity, because there will be end-to-end requirement to do things, and that can never change. Like one example I can give you from the construction industry, right? It has been around for forever, kind, right? Like you're building houses, building bridges, building roads, but you always have to start with the requirements and the blueprint, and someone has to always review, someone has to always inspect, someone has to always build it properly. So that has not changed. So from that perspective, I feel that cybersecurity has just started. People are now getting a hang of it, that okay, this is important, because it is not simply about there is a virus, people don't understand what the virus is, but this is about, if we do not secure, we may not get the gas to run our car. So it's as simple as that. If we do not secure, then we may not get the meat, if people eat meat, for the dinner, like, because there was a ransomware attack on the meat packing, the JBS thing. So that's where it is going to be just growing from there. And then you add to that, I hate to say, the nation state kind of thing, right? So that is not going anywhere. I wish I could tell you that, hey, we have solved all the problems for you. We are giving you a very safe, secure world, which does not have political imbalances. But sorry, that's not true, right? So with all those things happening, it is going to be as critical as ever. And there will be a lot of threats that we know about, and then threats that are emerging, or threats we don't know. What we don't know, we don't know. So, but we have to be prepared for that. So, lot of exciting stuff. I don't want to scare you away, and that's the idea. It should challenge you, right? That what is out there. I want to address that. I will not be, if I may say, frightened by this, because I am fully prepared to address that kind of risk and all, if I have these kind of resources and the support. And it's all over. It's not just us doing it. It's the schools. It's the townships. It's the public sector, the companies, then the government. There's a lot of information sharing, and a lot of, if I may say, partnerships from that perspective, and that will be here to stay for a long, I think, for a long time.
Sure, thanks. So let me give you my perspective. I worked in IT audit, then I was working in the fraud department, and then I am in risk management. And what I learned was that security is a mindset. There is going to be there, doesn't matter what technologies come up. Think about this blockchain, just now, smart contract review of those code, because once that thing is out, it's like a hardware. You can't go in and make changes to that. So there are the technology changes, there are new stuff that come in, but everything will have to be kept secure, because there will always be, unless everybody just says, okay, we are all going to be nice and we're not going to try and steal or try and, because even though nobody wants to steal anything, there are business logic vulnerabilities which have to be tested out. So it's security, like if you're working in an area of security, depends on like what you're doing, just be aware of what's coming next and how you can make that secure. So you will always keep your job. Security is going to be there, different names, different things, like maybe just now we don't even know what area of security you might work in. Gurdeep will always be there, like CISO will be a CISO. But if you are like starting out in a career, then there will be different roles. So initially, when I started, the only things that were doing was access control, and we were doing manual code reviews, and we were doing writing security policies. Now all that is taken care of. There are other things that get layered on top of it. There are different technologies like securing the cloud, securing your decentralized application which is used on the blockchain, etc. So depends what you do, but it will always be something new will come up, but that security component will always be there for a long time.
Okay, thank you so much. I think one question that was asked a little bit before was, I guess like in general, like what are your thoughts on like I know you mentioned like blockchain is a new coming technology, but what are your thoughts on also like cryptocurrency that comes along with it? Do you think there are more like negatives or positives to like cryptocurrency approaching as like a new form of like like monetary transaction or anything?
So basically now we are like going away from the technology, and we are talking about the uses.
Yeah.
Just like a car can be used, right,
Hmm.
to like run into a crowd and like kill people, it can be used to like safely transfer people from to and from work. So there are different things in how a technology is used. We don't even want to get into. One thing is very clear, because every transaction you can check anybody's transaction, you can go to anybody's wallet. So suppose you have a wallet address, you see all the transactions in that and everything. How somebody uses it is very, I mean, it's like, is it bad? So is that technology bad? Like people have these ransomware attacks. So are we going to now blame the technology? I don't think so, right? It's a good technology, and then how people use it is just out of people's control. So you can't say, oh, this is bad or this is good and something. And now as people, it's like the internet. There are so many apps that are created and everything. There are good things and bad things to it. So you can't just like shade just not because other people, most people don't know, and don't get into it because it's got this bad rap, like because all these ransomware attack people and stuff, they ask for something in Bitcoin instead of like dollars. If they were asking in dollars, would you say, oh, dollars are bad, don't buy it or something, right? It's like that. So just have that context to it. You can do a lot of things good with technology, with blockchain, with Cardano. You can check up. Cardano has projects which are helping schools in African countries for their identity, because things don't change. They've got good uses like land records and stuff, because once a record is put in, it you can't go and change it again, otherwise it's going to like throw everything off. So there are many good and bad things about it, and that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I think cryptocurrency is here to stay. So it's better for us, for all of us, whichever, Gen X or Gen Z, whatever, we all of us have to get comfortable with that because it's not going anywhere. And the technology behind it, the blockchain, it is enabling so many different things that it will be good for all of us to become very comfortable with blockchain, and then cryptocurrency being one, if I may say, the use case that was the front, if I may say, technology that has gained popularity a lot. And of course, it has its own, if I may say, negatives at this time. But then that's the whole idea, that here is a solution. Now, how do we put the controls around it? How do we make a framework within which, like, play by the rules? Right, so those rules have to, it will take a little time to mature those rules, and then it will take a little time for the solutions to come up again from the perspective of to prevent any non-compliance with the rules. And I'm using the non-compliance not from the checklist perspective but technical perspective, that how do you make sure that the controls are always implemented? How do you make sure that you can detect if something did not happen the way it had to be or it was supposed to be? So all that entire risk management framework, everything is about managing the risk. You have $5, you invest $2 in the crypto, you lose $2, you can afford that? Okay, but if you had $1,000, you invest $2, you're like, fine, I can afford to lose that $2. So it's always about managing the risk, and crypto is just, if I may say, maturing from that perspective. But I don't think it is going anywhere. So it will actually add, if I may say, more opportunities for us to make sure that we can, one, optimize the usage and then manage the risk with technical controls and with policy controls around that.
And to add to that, if you are interested in it, if you're interested in, say, cryptocurrency, go to ethereum.org, download the white paper, learn what the architecture is, what it does. Don't just look at say Kraken or Gemini or something and look at the prices. That's not going to help you much. So because we are all technologists, go and see how is it different from some other stuff that is going out there, and just learn about stuff, because the more you learn, the better informed you will be with what is going on. So any new project, somebody says, hey, this sushi or Sunday swap or God knows whatever else new thing is coming out, look what it does, because and people get conned and they lose their money on these things because they don't know what it does. When you don't know what something is doing, just don't bother, right? I mean, it's just common sense in that way.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a lot to differentiate between the technology and what uses that actually comes with. This is a general question, but what are the sort of best ways that we can reach out to you if you have questions or anything that we want to ask you after this webinar, like on LinkedIn or email or anything else? You guys have any contact information you want to share?
LinkedIn is the best way. So send me a message, connection request, whatever. But for me, LinkedIn is the best way to reach me.
Yes, for me, LinkedIn works, and I apologize in advance if you don't hear back right away. I do try to keep up, but sometimes I do lag behind. But that's, I think, one thing that I would recommend is do not ever give up, right? So if you reach out to 10 people, you are looking for help, and 5 of them don't return ever, no worries. But people who are returning, they have good intentions. Like people whom you reach out to, if I may say, people who are already in this cybersecurity career, they really, I can say for most of them, they really want to help out. So it's, so do not hesitate to reach out and be, if I may say, persistent sometimes. So be your own self. You're a kid, so you are entitled to being persistent. So take advantage of that.
And I'll tell you, so this is something that somebody else also shared with me. What they'd say is that don't respond, because I get 90 messages a day, and some of them be hi or something of that sort, where they're trying to almost talk like a chat. Now it's not a chat. So if you want something or you are interested, just let me know upfront. Hey, I'm doing this, and this is what it is, right? Because I mean, I've responded to these hi text, hi, and then I'm like, hello, how can I help? And then say, how are you? And I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, this is done. I'm done with you. So like out of those 90 messages, like most probably I won't respond the first time, because I just want to know if somebody is, interested, or, they're just like, it's just like a random thing. And people who like communicate again, I will like, okay, listen to what they've got to say. So just make sure that follow up. And most people will reply to your LinkedIn messages the third time. And there's a reason for this, because they want to not, they want to like not communicate with people who are like not that persistent or not really interested. Because if I'm interested in something, I've followed up multiple times and I've got responses from people. So just use the same trick with everybody,
Yeah. I'll see if I can send out like the LinkedIn links in a little bit, but
just do a search on both our names and you'll see us pop up. So just don't spoon feed to anybody.
Okay. I think if there aren't any more questions, I don't think there are. I think most of them were answered. If there are any more questions, I just want to say like thank you so much, both like Nilofer and Gurdeep, for coming here. Also for like helping us like set up this whole like webinar Young Scholar like program in general with the big marker. It's been like a lot of help, and I know like this like you were talking about like reaching out like firsthand. Like I know like reaching out to a lot of people and like getting this sort of help back. It was definitely like something I wasn't expecting that much, but like it helped a lot and helped us like sort of make this program. So I want to say thank you again, and yeah, thank you for coming here. Thank you for answering the questions and taking the time to help like these people out, and also help me out because I learned a lot too about like how to sort of pursue cybersecurity in the future.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. There is no stupid question. So just tell, like, if you have a question, reach out to somebody and have it answered. Now the thing is, always volunteer, because you will learn a lot by volunteering. You will get in touch with people a lot by volunteering. And Meher, thank you so much. I really appreciate. I think I told you my son's name is also Meher. So, but thank you so much for reaching out to us, and we're glad to help. Gurdeep has been a big supporter of High School Navigator, so thank you so much. And Gurdeep, you can.
Yep, thanks, Nilofer. I will just echo what you said. And I also want to highlight that when we were doing the ISC Squared chapter, Nilofer actually started the junior chapter. And that was for the high school kids and the college kids. So we really, it's not for publishing somewhere or to get credit, but yes, we are definitely passionate about making sure we can help with preparing the next generation, if I may say, the cybersecurity professionals. And then just to highlight that cybersecurity is not only about programming and the penetration testing or building new things. It's also about how do you think about any new solution. You may have that critical analytical skills, critical thinking skills, that you can see things in there that, hey, I think that if this is not addressed, bad people can get in. That's the kind of, if I may say, attitude, aptitude that is required in cybersecurity. Everything else can fall in place. You will find a lot of mentors as you grow along, as you do your, hopefully you all go to college, as you do your undergrad, and there will be a lot of help along the way. So I don't think that will be a barrier at all. It's just that you have to just take it with open mind, and always be curious, always think about things, and always question. And that's what we really need, to keep our nation secure as well at this time. So happy to be here and glad to help.
Thank you so much, and thank you for everyone coming out here to the webinars. I'll see you guys next week with the next webinars.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.